Hey, what's up guys? Tim here, and I am excited about this one today. We're going to be building the easiest VJ loop you have ever made over here in After Effects, default layout and stock plugins. This one is super customizable. Once you build it, feels like the options are endless. So I'm excited for you guys to try this one out and see what you create with it. Those of you who know me or have followed me, this is literally one of my favorite things to do throughout my career, throughout my time as a visual designer, making loops for concerts, for artists, for lyric videos, different things like that. And I've been doing this for quite a long time, and I thought of nothing better than to share this with you guys and get you started on your own VJ loops. This one is super customizable, super easy to make. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to hit new composition here, and in my composition name, let's name this one base, as we usually do, because this will be our base layer. And I'm going to keep this at 1920 by 1080. Let's change the frame rate to 24 frames per second. And in the duration, let's change this to 30 seconds long. So we're going to have a looping 30-second visual here, and everything else looks good. I'm going to hit OK, and we are inside of our base composition. So down in my timeline here, let's start this off with a solid. New, solid, and I'm going to name this one pink, because that's what the color of this particular layer is going to be. So let's change this to white on the color, and the pink will come in. We'll make a fill effect there. So I'm gonna hit make comp size just to make sure we're at the 1920 by 1080, and let's hit OK. So what's cool about this VJ loop is it's just duplicated layers, but all the movement is done for us with one plugin. So we're actually not really going to be keyframing anything until later on, but there's only 2 keyframes we're going to do throughout this whole thing. Otherwise, it's going to move and function all on its own. So with our pink layer here, let's come over to our effects and presets and type in CC Starburst. And there it is, CC Starburst. And I'm going to double click on that to apply it to my pink layer. So if I just go ahead and play this, you can see that it moves on its own. And it's super cool even by itself, but there's so much we can do with this. So pause that, bring my playhead back to the beginning, and let's play around with these settings right here. So on my scatter, let's change that to 300. Space that out a little bit. Our speed, let's keep that at 1. And over here on our grid spacing, I'm just going to bump that up to 5. And our size, we can keep at 100. So you can see we've slowed it down a little, made some room within those kind of stars flying at us. This is where the pink will come in as we named our layer. Let's come to effects and presets and type in fill. Let's double click that. And on my color here, I'm going to type in FF37A4. That's all we need to do with our fill. Let's come back over. One more thing we're going to do on this pink layer is a radial blur. I'm going to type that in my effects and presets. I have radial blur here. I don't want my CC radial blur, just the regular radial blur. I'm going to double click on that. And we're going to keep this centered right here. And let's change the 10 to 23. And we'll keep that on spin and the anti-aliasing at low. So that looks good. You can see we've kind of lost our stars there from this blur, but we're going to bring those back in later. So this looks good. I'm going to twirl up everything right here. And the next thing we're going to do is take this pink layer down on our timeline, hit Command or Control D, so we duplicate that. And I'm going to hit Enter and name this to green. And we're just going to tweak a couple settings in here, and we're going to do this 4 times as we change the colors, but just some slight variations to give us this look. So on our scatter, let's change this to 350. Our speed can stay at 1. And then on our grid spacing, let's change that to 10. And let's go to our fill. And instead of that pink, I'm going to change this to a nice kind of green blue. So 00FF9E. Kind of get that seafoam in there, hit OK. You can see kind of the variations in there now. The radial blur we can leave alone. So let's come back down to our timeline. Command or Control D. I'm going to rename that green to, I'm going to name that to blue. And on our starburst, let's drop this to 250. And on our grid spacing, I'm going to change that to 15. Let's come to our fill. And since we named this blue, we're going to change this to a nice blue color. So let's go 0054FF. Got a kind of a nice bright royal blue there. Let's hit OK. And that looks good there. So come down to our timeline and Command or Control D one more time. Hit Enter, and let's change this to orange. And we will mess with these settings just a little bit. I'm going to change the scatter to 200. You can see as we're doing that, we're kind of changing the position of everything. And on our grid spacing, let's change this to 20. And then just on this last one right here, I'm going to change the size to 50. On our fill, let's click that. And I'm going to change that from that blue to an orange. So FFB800. And you can kind of see that orange introduced in there. So we have all our colors. And if I play through this, it's really dim right now. You can see, might want to drop your resolution if you need to, but looking good so far. Let's bring these colors and give them a boost. Let's bring them back into our scene. So I'm going to come back down to my timeline, and above this orange layer, let's right click, new adjustment layer. We're going to drop an adjustment layer right above that orange layer right on top. So inside of here, we're going to drop a couple glows. So I'm going to hit enter and rename this adjustment layer to glow so we know what we're doing here. And over in effects and presets, type in glow, and I'm going to double click, making sure that my glow adjustment layer is selected, and that glow will land right on top of there. So you can already see, even just putting that on, it reintroduces a lot of those colors and the brightness. And so with this first glow here, I'm just going to leave it. The default's good enough for me. Like I said, if I turn that off and on, you can see we already boosted those colors back in there. And so this looks good. What I'm going to do, though, is duplicate this. And so with that glow selected, I'm going to hit Command D. We're going to have that glow too, and you can see even more now. We are boosting these colors, but I'm actually going to tweak this just a little bit. So on our glow threshold, let's change that to 11. On our radius, I'm going to bump that all the way to 125, kind of soften out those edges. And then on the intensity, let's change that to 3.5. And I'm going to change the glow colors from original colors to A and B. That looks good. And then on my color A, I'm just going to change that from white to black. And so if I turn that one off and on, you can see we're kind of giving it a boost right in these middle parts here, just to keep that continuity across the whole loop. So if I come down here and scrub through, you can see it's a steady loop of these colors and nothing's really fading or losing opacity or anything like that. So that's looking good already, but of course we're going to make this better. So let's twirl our glow too, and this is everything we need to do in our base composition. I like how this is looking, so I'm going to come back to my project panel, come down to my create new comp icon here, click that, and let's name this one render. Same settings as we had before, 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second, 30 seconds long, and let's hit OK. And now we have our empty render comp. I'm going to come up to my project panel, grab my base composition, and drag that inside of my render composition. I already like the look of this, but there is much more we can do, and this is where a lot of the really nice looks come in here. So we have our base composition. We're not going to do anything with that, but we are going to create 4 adjustment layers. So right down here in my timeline, let's right-click, new adjustment layer, right-click, new adjustment layer, right-click, new adjustment layer, and one more time. On my first adjustment layer right above my base comp, I'm going to hit enter, name this levels. The one above that, I'm going to name that distort. Next one, enhance. And this last one, I'm going to name atmosphere. And so these are just going to have different effects and settings that we're going to be able to turn on and off. But just as we build this, you'll kind of know what each one of these does. So of course, on our levels adjustment layer, we'll start there. And on the levels, we're going to put levels. So effects and presets, type in levels, and I'm going to double click that levels plugin there. So the first thing I'm going to do is change this from RGB to alpha. And on my alpha input black, I'm going to change that from 0 to 65. On the white, I'm going to drop that to 175. And the gamma, black, and white look good right there. So let's keep those, and this looks good. So if I turn that on and off, you can see kind of giving it a boost within a lot of those colors, and then crunching a lot of those blacks as well, which is exactly what we want. So that's all we need to do on the levels. On the distort, let's select that down in our timeline. And with the distort layer selected, come over to our effects and presets. First thing I'm going to do is a CC lens. Type that in. So we have CC lens right here. I'm going to double click, and you can see kind of cool like that as well. But let's kind of stretch this out so it takes up the whole screen. What I'm going to do is change the size from 50 to 100, kind of bring that back full screen there. And then the convergence, I'm going to drop to 50. And now we have kind of that tunnel effect again. And what's happening here with this lens is it's stretching these edges, kind of to make it a more solid tunnel look. It gives that illusion a little bit, as well as kind of pulling it off the screen, which I really like. So this is a nice look right here. Really trippy, really can get lost in this loop, but still more we can do. So let's twirl up CC lens, And our distort layer is still selected here. Let's go back to effects and presets, type in vector blur, and you'll see it pop up right there, CC vector blur. I'm going to double click on that to lay it right on top of that CC lens. And let's keep the type at natural. The amount, let's just jump that to 10. The angle offset looks good there. The ridge smoothness, I'm going to bump that just to 1.5. And the rest of this looks good. Maybe the map softness we can bump to 30 just to kind of bring that in a little bit more. So this looks great right there. Let's twirl that up. And then last thing we're going to do on this distort is brightness and contrast. Type that in over in your effects and presets. Double click. And on the brightness, let's crank that to 150. Ooh, that looks good. And then on the contrast, I'm going to make that 75. Love how this looks already. Yep, perfect. And so that's all we need to do on our distort there. So if I turn that on and off, and this is why I like doing this on adjustment layers in different sections. But if I turn that on and off, you can see what kind of a difference that's making. So this looks good. On the next adjustment layer, we have enhance. And all we're going to do is just kind of enhance this thing, give it a couple different looks. So I'm going to select that adjustment layer in there. And on my effects and presets, let's type in magnify. And make sure you're grabbing the one on distort and not this animations preset. So I'm going to double click on that one. And let's just change a couple things in here. So the shape is great with the circle. We could also do square, but I'm going to keep this one at circle here. And on the magnification, let's boost that all the way to 500. And then on this link, I'm going to put this to size to magnification. And so you can kind of see what's happening there. It's bringing it up to size, and it's giving this nice, like, you know, I'm trying to find a spot right. This looks good. So you can see where it's magnifying right here. If I zoom in, it's kind of blurring that out. Sizing that up to the magnification that we set on this 500. So if I drop that, you know, you can see it go back down. So 500 right here. And it's really harsh right now, which I don't want. So we can change that with the size and feathers. So on the size, let's put this at like 480. You can see we're kind of off the comp now, bringing those super nice soft glows, blurry glows to this thing, giving it a lot more depth. And then on the feather, I'm just going to change that to 200, and just to make sure we've lost any kind of harsh edges. So it's circle anymore, but just these nice floating, blurry, glowy lines coming at us. So already looking super good. Let's twirl at magnify. This is really all we need to do on this one. I'm going to twirl at magnify, come over to my effects and presets, type in CC light, if I can type it, light burst. And we have our CC light burst 2.5 under generate, and I'm going to double click on that, dropping it right above my magnify plugin there. And on the intensity, let's drop that to 50. I mean, this is a cool look too. That's what I mean. This thing's super customizable once you get it built out, but I'm going to build it out how I originally had it and then let you guys play around with it later. So intensity 50. On the ray length, let's go to 10. And then on the burst, we'll keep that at fade. So this looks good. I love how it's coming off the screen here. Nice and bright, a lot of nice glows. Love it. So twirl up light burst over in our effect controls, and we're going to add one more thing to this enhance layer. So CC radial blur is what we're doing next. Make sure it's not that radial fast blur, but we want it at the radial blur. So double click on that. And the type, we're going to change that from scratch to fading zoom. And on the amount, let's go 15. And the quality can stay at 50. But all we want to do is kind of fade out those edges a little bit, blur them a little bit, give it more depth so we can focus on this middle here. And so if I play through that a little, you can see what we're going for. So nice and clear here in the middle, getting really blurry and nice on the edges here as it comes off. You can kind of see if I turn that on and off what we're going for. So just a little more of that zoom effect as we're coming off the screen. This looks awesome. Perfect. And so the last thing we're going to do, this is kind of optional. I liked it on the atmosphere here. You know, this is super dark right in here, which I love, a lot of neon and everything. But I just wanted to give it a little bit of that atmosphere, smoky effect, nothing too crazy. And so I kind of resolved to doing this. And this is the only place we're going to add a keyframe. So first thing I'm going to do with my atmosphere adjustment layer selected, I come down to my toggle switches and modes, and if this isn't up for you yet, just bring up your blending modes. So It may be there already, it may not be. If it's not, that's how you get to it. So under my blending modes here, I'm just going to change this atmosphere from normal to add. And as we apply our effects, it's just going to lay over the top of this and not take over the whole composition, which will be super nice. So the only two things we're going to do is a fractal noise and a fast blur. So let's start with the fractal noise. Over in our effects and presets, I'm going to type in fractal, and we have our fractal noise under noise and grain. With my atmosphere layer selected, I'm going to double click that, and you can kind of see that smokiness already in, but it's obviously super static. And this is somewhere you can change a lot of settings to get different looks, but we'll just kind of show you what I've done through here. So on the fractal type, I'm going to keep that at basic, but the noise type, I'm going to change that to spline. And let's turn on the invert. Contrast, drop to 60. Brightness, drop to -50. Even I turn that on and off, you can see just how slight that is, and I really like that. So let's go ahead and drop down our transform. And on our uniform scaling, let's uncheck that and scale width, go from 100 to 300. And on our height, let's go to 300 as well on that. And so that's really all we need to do within the transform. Let's twirl that up. Complexity can stay at 6. The only thing we're going to do here is change the evolution to kind of cycle through a couple times just to give it some more movement. So if I bring my brightness up here, I'll just do that. I'll do -10 just so we can see this more of an effect on those clouds. So like I said, right now, nothing's really happening. There's no movement within those, which is kind of fine because the neon glows are taking care of itself. But I still do want to add some movement within that atmosphere. So with my playhead at 0 frames, 0 seconds, I'm going to hit that stopwatch on evolution, and I have 0 revolution, 0 degrees. That's where I want it. And I'm going to come back to my timeline, take my playhead all the way to the end, 30 seconds on that last frame. And I'm just going to change it from 0 revolutions to 5 revolutions. So it's going to go 360 degrees 5 times. Make sure you're doing that revolutions and not the degrees. If I kind of play through that now, you can see it's a lot more dynamic with those clouds kind of popping up everywhere within that. Kind of zoom in here. You can see they're catching those glows everywhere. Looking super good. So I didn't like how strong it is on that -10, and that's kind of why I dropped it to -50, but just play around with it, get it to where you're comfortable. And then one last thing we need to do on the evolution is drop down evolution options and just click cycle evolution. And all that's doing is making sure it loops perfectly from the last frame to the first frame. So I'm going to go back to my effect controls, twirl up fractal noise, and one last plugin we're going to add here is a radial fast blur. And I'm going to double click on that, drop it right above my fractal noise. And there's a couple cool things you can do here as well. If I crank it up, you can see we're kind of getting that super like light beamy look coming through here, which is nice. And on the brightest setting, that looks good. And I'm going to drop down my fractal noise one more time. And let's go to -50 on that again. So yeah, maybe -40. I don't know. I kind of like how those lines are glowing like that, kind of the light rays coming off, but maybe I don't either. I don't know. Again, you play around with it, kind of see what you like, what you're comfortable with. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so I'm going to keep it at -50. Yeah, I just like how these are kind of raying out as they come through and then losing them as they go out. So this looks good. All right, guys. Well, that's it. Again, the easiest VJ loop you'll ever make. Pretty much all done for you within After Effects stock plugins. Only 2 keyframes on that evolution, but even then, if you didn't want to do that, you'd literally have to not keyframe anything to get this result. So I really love how this turned out, and I'd love to see how you're using this. So as always, you can hit me up over on Instagram at Timmy Dwyer. I'd love to see what you're doing in there. Tag me in your posts or your stories, anything like that, so I can see the results of your following along with these tutorials and how you've made it better. That's all I want, is for you guys to take these things and make it better than I have. So hit me up over there or in the comment section here on YouTube. Love interacting with you all there, hearing your comments and your thoughts on the tutorials. Also, any kind of feedback or ideas for another tutorial, I'd love to hear those as well. So drop a comment down below. You can also go over to my store, find project files, different texture packs, a lot of different things and fun assets over there to help you with your projects, with your work. And that's over on radloops.com. I'll link that in the description here, but you can go over there, get whatever you need. There's a lot of cool packs and everything for you to take a look through and play around with. So as always, thank you so much for joining in here. I am super excited about this result. Again, I want to see what you made, so let me know. And until the next tutorial, I hope you guys have the best day.